Her life had never been simple, but until the last few years she had thought she understood the shape of her world. Emma grew up believing family was everything. Her parents had drilled it into her from the earliest days of childhood, reminding both daughters that they only had each other when the world turned cruel. She and her younger sister, Claire, were expected to be close, to protect one another, to share their secrets and burdens. For a time, Emma tried to believe in that bond, but Claire had always had a darker edge, a craving for attention, a hunger to outshine Emma no matter the cost. What started as childish jealousy grew into a pattern that poisoned nearly every stage of Emma's life. By the time Emma married Daniel, her longtime love, she thought she had finally stepped out of her sister's shadow. Daniel was steady, devoted, and saw through Claire's manipulations. Emma remembered the day of their wedding, how Claire had arrived wearing a dress just slightly too glamorous, stealing glances at the guests as if daring them to notice her instead of the bride. Emma ignored it. She was happy, and for once, she felt that maybe Claire's pettiness couldn't touch her anymore. She didn't know then how wrong she was. Marriage brought Emma joy, stability, and the hope of building her own family. She and Daniel shared laughter over small things, late-night conversations, and dreams of children that would one day fill their home. But Claire lingered at the edges, always hovering, always intruding. She would show up uninvited, making excuses about loneliness, or needing advice, or just missing her sister. Emma tolerated it, even when Daniel seemed uncomfortable. After all, Claire was family, and family was supposed to be forgiven, welcomed, even when they caused discomfort. Over time, though, the unease deepened. Claire was reckless, flirty in ways Emma tried not to acknowledge. She would laugh too loudly at Daniel's jokes, brush his arm when she passed him, sit too close on the couch when visiting. Daniel always looked away, forcing space between them, but Emma's stomach churned with a quiet dread. She told herself it was her imagination, that Daniel loved her and would never betray her. But the unease remained. The shattering truth came months later, delivered like a knife in the dark. Claire was pregnant. Not only pregnant, but pregnant with Daniel's child. Emma discovered it in the ugliest way, not through a confession, but through whispers, through evidence she pieced together, through the agonizing realization that her husband and sister had crossed a line she could never have imagined. When the words left Claire's lips, spoken not with shame but with a twisted sense of triumph, Emma's entire world collapsed. The betrayal was so vast she could barely breathe. The man she trusted most, the sister she had forgiven countless times, had joined together in a treachery that made Emma feel small, broken, and foolish. Her parents, upon learning the truth, were devastated as well. They had seen Claire's selfish streak but never dreamed it would manifest in something so destructive. For the first time in their lives, they acted with a firmness that startled Emma. They cut Claire out of the will, a gesture that was both practical and symbolic. They no longer wished to reward the daughter who had shattered the family with deceit. Emma should have felt vindicated, but instead, she felt only hollow. Her marriage was in ruins, her sense of trust obliterated, and the bond with her sister obliterated beyond repair. Daniel begged for forgiveness, claiming it was a mistake, a lapse, that he loved Emma and not Claire. But the child growing inside Claire's body made his words meaningless. A mistake might be forgotten, a child could never be erased. Claire, however, was not triumphant anymore. Pregnancy, stripped of fantasy, brought fear. She had counted on her parents' support, on their wealth and comfort, to shield her from consequences. When they turned their backs on her, she realized she was more alone than she had ever been. Friends drifted away, unwilling to involve themselves in the scandal. Daniel refused to take responsibility beyond guilt-ridden words, clinging desperately to Emma instead. And Emma's parents, once doting, treated Claire like a stranger. Desperation changed her. She arrived at Emma's doorstep one rainy night, her face pale, her eyes swollen from tears. She no longer carried the smug smile she once wore like armor. Instead, she looked fragile, almost childlike, as if she had finally realized the depth of her ruin. She begged Emma for help, food, shelter, money, forgiveness. She whispered promises that she had changed, that she understood now what she had destroyed, that she could not survive without her sister's mercy. Emma stood in the doorway, torn between fury and pity. This was the same sister who had made her life a living hell, who had stolen her husband's loyalty, who carried the ultimate symbol of betrayal in her womb. And yet, Claire's face was etched with a kind of despair Emma had never seen before. It stirred something reluctant in her, a faint memory of the little girl who used to crawl into her bed at night during storms, clutching her for comfort. Helping Claire felt impossible, but abandoning her felt equally unbearable. Emma's heart was a battlefield of rage and compassion, betrayal and loyalty. Every choice seemed wrong. To take Claire in would mean reopening wounds that had barely begun to scab over. To turn her away would mean becoming someone Emma was not, someone hardened, someone unrecognizable. In the weeks that followed, the tension grew unbearable. Emma's parents urged her to let Claire face the consequences of her choices, reminding her that forgiveness did not mean enabling destruction. Daniel hovered uneasily, terrified that Emma's compassion for Claire would undo what little remained of their marriage. Claire herself became increasingly frantic, her pleas turning to sobs, her sobs to silence. Emma found herself haunted by questions. Was blood truly thicker than betrayal? Could one ever forgive a sister who had crossed such a boundary? Could she raise her husband's child as an innocent, or would the child's very existence remain a wound? The story of their lives twisted into something unrecognizable, a maze of pain and impossible decisions. Emma was no longer simply a daughter, a wife, a sister. She was the keeper of choices that could either heal or destroy. Every night she lay awake, listening to the silence of her home, wondering if mercy could coexist with memory, if forgiveness could ever outweigh the scars of betrayal. And when she looked into Claire's desperate eyes, she realized that perhaps the true torment was not in what had been done, but in what she would choose to do next. Emma had always believed her life would unfold along a predictable path. She was the eldest daughter, the dependable one, the child who kept secrets for her parents and cleaned up after her younger sister's messes. From her earliest memories, she carried responsibility like a second skin. She remembered late nights when their mother was sick and she rocked Claire to sleep, humming lullabies while wishing she too could close her eyes and be comforted. She remembered the school mornings when Claire refused to wear her uniform properly, throwing tantrums, and Emma was the one who smoothed things over, pleading with the teachers not to call their parents. She remembered how Claire, even as a little girl, wanted attention in a way that devoured everything around her, and how she, Emma, always stepped aside, always surrendered the spotlight to keep the peace. That pattern followed them into adulthood, though Emma had hoped it would fade with time. Claire was magnetic, reckless, and beautiful in a way that made people forgive her sins too easily. Emma, by contrast, was steady, thoughtful, careful not to wound. People called her the good daughter, but in her heart she sometimes wondered if that only meant the daughter who endures. Still, she clung to family, to duty, to the belief that blood was sacred. When she met Daniel, kind, intelligent, and rooted, she thought she had finally found something for herself, something no one could take away. The wedding should have been proof of that. Emma walked down the aisle in ivory silk, her hand trembling in her father's arm, her eyes locked on Daniel's. And there, on the second row, Claire sat with her painted smile, her dress glittering just a shade too much. Emma had seen her sister flirt with the groomsmen, laugh too loudly during the reception, but she forced herself not to care. Nothing, she thought, could spoil this. Daniel was hers, and she was his. Marriage brought warmth and safety. Daniel worked hard but always found time to cook with her, to share coffee on the balcony in the quiet mornings, to ask about her dreams for the future. They spoke often of children, and Emma imagined herself as a mother, weaving a family story built on love and loyalty. For once, her life felt hers alone, not